We're on day 6 of our 19-day Alaska-Yukon tour with Holland America. Today we're cruising Glacier Bay, and we're out on the bow by 8:15, taking in some of the spectacular scenery, and hoping to catch a view of some of the wildlife. On our cruise in, we literally saw hundreds of sea otters, most of them basking on their backs. Our first stop is Marjorie Glacier. It seemed we were further away than we were on our visit 10 years ago. The naturalist on board said we were as close as we could get to the glacier, and about 10 years ago it was about half the distance to the ship than it was now. She also said it used to be 2 to 3 times wider. After leaving the area of Marjorie Glacier, we head toward Johns Hopkins Glacier, with Mount Orville standing proudly in the background. On our way out of the bay, we did see a couple of bald eagles, as well as some seals basking in the sunshine. Once we were out at sea, we enjoyed a few drinks at happy hour and relaxed on a veranda. After dinner, we enjoyed some of the entertainment, including a dance performance called Humanity, as well as spending some more time at the piano bar. Today will be spent mostly at sea, until we get to College Fjords at 6 o'clock tonight. College Fjord is 20 miles long and is located in Prince William Sound. This fjord contains 5 tidewater glaciers, 5 valley glaciers, as well as many other small glaciers in the surrounding hills. College Fjord gets its name because many of the glaciers are named after well-known eastern colleges. The glaciers on the northwest side are named for women's colleges, while the rest are named for men's colleges. This is Harvard Glacier, the largest glacier in College Fjord, and the second largest in Prince William Sound. The next morning we're in Whittier, getting up early for our last breakfast on the ship before we transfer over to a train. Whittier is very small, with only about 220 year-round residents. Just after leaving town, we went through a 2.5-mile long tunnel, which alternates between road and rail traffic, and besides boat is the only way in and out of town. This marshy area with dead trees is called the Ghost Forest. It was caused in 1964, when an earthquake caused the land to sink. Our assigned seats were across from a couple from Argentina, who didn't speak much English. And after exploring the train for a bit, I found the bistro car, where we spent most of our 2.5-hour ride to Anchorage. The attendant was quite informative, telling us stories about the sights we were seeing, including these mud flats, which act like quicksand, trapping both horses and people who wander into them. Arriving at noon, we were told to meet at the hotel at about 4 o'clock. Nearby was a small Sunday market, but nothing really of much interest. We ended up having lunch at Uncle Joe's Pizzeria. Marianne had one of their specialties, cheddar, reindeer sausage, and some sort of fish. Next we went to the Federal Building, which houses a museum. We were just in time for a talk on the Inupiat, who live on the very northern edge of Alaska, and their spring whale hunting festival called the Inuttaq. There were only 4 of us in the audience, but the presentation was very interesting. Checking into our hotel was totally unorganized, and with a number of different tour groups staying there, it seemed like they didn't know what to do with us. Wanting to try some locally brewed sodas, we went to the 49th State Brewing Company. We were very disappointed. They tasted more like a lightly carbonated syrup. We're on our own today, and we arranged for e-bike rentals at Pablo's Bicycle Rental. With the salmon running, we're heading toward a fish hatchery just out of town. This is Salmon Row, the preferred bait for catching salmon. We're visiting the William Jack Hernandez Sports Fish Hatchery. It was built in 2011 and has over 100 rearing tanks, able to produce more than 6 million fish a year. Here they're catching the wild Chinook salmon to collect their eggs. This dam was originally built to provide cooling water for a hydroelectric plant nearby, but that plant ceased operation in 2006. There also used to be a fish ladder here, so salmon could get past the dam, but that has also been closed. So according to the sign posted, the salmon are blocked here, because if the salmon were allowed upstream, they could attract more birds, which could become a safety hazard for the pilots of the nearby military base. After leaving the hatchery, we headed for the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail. Unfortunately, finding the start of the trail wasn't easy, and we both had a mishap. We went as far as Earthquake Park, before we decided to head back and lick our wounds. Dinner was across the street, at the Glacier Brewery, after an hour-and-a-half wait. Today we're back on a train, heading toward Mckinley Chalet, Holland America's resort just outside of Denali National Park. Our 8-hour trip is enhanced by the dome viewing cars, owned by both Holland America and Princess Cruises. We're located at the end of the train, which gives us easy access to the outdoor viewing platform. Off in the distance here we get our first view of Mount Denali. Apparently this is an unusual sight, since its peak is usually covered in thick clouds. As we approached Hurricane Gulch, the outdoor viewing platform became quite crowded. The bridge spanning this gorge is Alaska's longest and tallest railroad bridge, standing 296 feet tall and 918 feet long. It was originally built in 1921 and is scheduled for refurbishment next year. We got to the lodge about 6:15, giving us about an hour and a half before our Music of Denali dinner show. After cleaning up, we headed toward Denali Square, a central location where they have music and fire pits. For dinner we sat at long tables, and the food was served family style. Each waiter had their own table, and were also the entertainers in the show. As for the show, the best way I would describe it would be campy. We're up early the next morning for our bus tour into Denali National Park. Once again, a beautiful day with clear views of the mountain. Our tour guide said that a lot of the larger animals have moved up to higher elevations due to the unusually high temperatures. We did see a quick glimpse of a small moose and these antlers of a caribou laying down in the brush. The tour is shorter than it used to be because of the large landslide in 2021 that took the road out at mile marker 43. So we were back at the lodge by 12:30. That afternoon we stayed around the lodge. They had some dog sled puppies you can spend some time with. We also went over to the Princess Cruise Lodge, since it's a shared facility with Holland America. We also spent some time window shopping at the stores across the street. We ended our day taking a guided nature walk, hosted by a college student who worked in the gift shop. The next morning we were on a tour called the Denali ATV Trailblazer Adventure.
We're basically inside of the park without being inside of the park. We are surrounded by it on 3 sides. This is the exact same scenery that you guys would get inside of the park. Back in the 80s when they were expanding the park from 2 million to 6 million, the town of Healy didn't even have a grocery store. When they were gonna put this in the park, they were like, hey dude, like we need to be able to hunt and to fish and to ride our ATVs for fun. And so they decided to leave this little chunk of heaven out of the park. And this is what's called the Stampede Corridor.
When we booked this tour, we were hoping to see some wildlife. But this was more of a rough and tumble ride through riverbeds and trails. No way is any sort of wildlife going to come anywhere near us. Behind us is a lateral glacial moraine, also known as the Sandcastle. This strange little vehicle was part of a different tour, and it was called a fat truck. After the tour, we quickly took a shower to get all the dust off, and caught one of the shuttle buses into the park. We get off at the Horseshoe Lake trailhead for a picturesque 2-hour hike. This hike took us back down to the river, right across from Holland America's property. Here we saw something swimming in the water. With all the beaver in the area, we thought for sure it must be a beaver, but no, taking a closer look, it was an otter. Without having much luck for quality food since we left the ship, we decided to go to a Thai place that we saw earlier in the day. It turned out to be one of our best meals in Denali. It's our last day in Denali, and since we're not leaving until 2, we're heading back into the park and the visitor center, where they're having a dog sled presentation.
Good round of applause. Right. Yeah. We get these dogs in the front. They're the lead dog. Everyone always asks me, Mark, is the lead dog the smartest dog? And I always say, is the best driver in your family the smartest person? Usually those two things don't equate. These lead dogs up here, does anyone have one of those fancy cars like that goes boop, boop, boop when you like drive out of the lane, or like slams on the brakes when you're trying to hit a parking barrier? That's sort of what these dogs do best. They have just this intuition. There's not a single musher out there that I know that hasn't had a story to share where that dog was disobeying their command. The ranger's yelling, G, G, which is right, or haw, haw, which is left, and the dog is going the other way. And then they go through something and they realize when they turn around, there's a gigantic tree with a bunch of stobs sticking off of it. Or there's a big hole in the overflow ice, or there's a 20-foot snowbank that drops into nothing. And the dog goes around it because they know. These dogs are better than your Subaru or your Lexus at avoiding those crashes. And that's why they're the best at being the lead dog. Doesn't mean they're the smartest. Dog behind them we generally call swing dog, getting the other dogs into the swing of things. This dog I like to put out there is like the best communicator, okay? I know, Cupcake, I know. This dog is like the communicator between what the lead dog is doing. Lead dog's doing a lot. Mushing, watching around, looking for obstacles, listening to that guy in the back just yelling at them the whole time. And they need to communicate that to the rest of the dogs. So swing dog is to help pull the rest of the dog team around the corner, swing them around the corner. In the middle, we'd have what we call team dogs. Those team dogs are what you're going to expand. If you need to carry a big project like that Triple Lake suspension bridge out there, you're going to need a ton of dogs. These dogs can carry about 50 pounds extra. That doesn't include themselves, their harness, the tackle, the sled, or the ranger. 50 pounds extra on top of all that each. So you multiply that by how much weight you need to carry, and boom, you've got the number of team dogs that you need. Usually you can go up to about 20. It's a lot of dogs. In the back there, generally we've got some stronger or larger dogs. They're called wheel dog. Has anyone ever tried to push a really heavily loaded cart and like it just takes a little bit of pressure to move it just at first, then you have that momentum and that inertia going for you. That's what these wheel dogs do. They're generally a little bigger, generally a little stronger, and they help to get that cart moving right off the bat.
At 2:30, we were on our bus heading toward Fairbanks. But first we had a 40-minute stop in the small town of Nenana. After our guide Tony kept hyping up the incredible cinnamon rolls sold at the general store, they weren't making them that day. But they did have a nice selection of root beer. Across the way, the train station also had a gift shop and an interesting railroad museum. About 3 hours after leaving Denali, we were settled into our hotel in Fairbanks.